Jordan and Gretzky, Serena and Ruth. Remembering great ones is easy to do. But what about the no-names who spent their whole lives long snapping footballs and catching sack flies? They're guys, remember that guy. Remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy, remember that guy. They're just gonna remember some guys now.
Oh no! Oh my goodness! The White Sox have just gone full. Remember that guy? The show where we mine our memories from nuggets of nostalgia by peripheral players, past and present. Hey there, folks! It is me, one of your hosts, James, ready to take yet another loss this calendar year, just like them Southsiders, in no small part due to the people I am joined by today.
Well, listen, that was a beautiful call. Diaz back with you once again. I don't know if our special guest can spin a yarn quite as well as he can, but he can spin a thing or two, and he's our very special guest. Please introduce yourself.
You know what? I can say the White Sox have gone all White Sox because, let's be honest here, all of us are better at our jobs than every single member of the entire White Sox organization, which is sad, but probably true at this point.
Now, here's what I'll say. Organization? Yes, because organization implies the people that have put the team on the field.
Well, think about it on a scale. Those players are probably in the bottom 1% of MLB players, if that's how you define their job.
For sure.
Are you in the bottom 1% of your job at museums? I hope not.
I don't think you could divorce them from professional players.
That's what I was going to say. Professional baseball is the criteria. So, automatically, everybody in the minor league system, by virtue of how that system works, we have to consider them as better than those players.
Yeah.
I bet you there is a team that I could make of minor leaguers right now that is better than this White Sox team.
I will tell you right now, as a fan of the single best minor league team in baseball for 3 years running, the Norfolk Tides would probably still get waxed by the Chicago White Sox.
But that's talking about the best team. I'm saying if I took the top 25 prospects in baseball, put them on the same team,
the fucking MLB Futures game roster.
They're better than the White Sox.
Okay, sure.
You know, it would be a fun experiment, and it would probably be in the Astros organization, unfortunately. But if we looked at since the turn of the millennium, you can't say necessarily the greatest minor league team because maybe, they didn't find their stride yet at that point. But which minor league roster is the greatest minor league roster in the that's not something we can do right now.
I would stack up last year's Norfolk Tides team against just about anybody, and this year's has a better record.
That's fair. I mean, the Reading Phils when they had Ryan Howard and Chase Utley.
For sure.
I'm going to put up there as well. But it's an interesting thought experiment. I don't think it's something we can solve right now, but it could be a good off-season topic. What was the best G League roster ever assembled?
Yeah, I think we could work with that. But what I need to work with right now, if you don't mind, is whatever it is that's making memories for you. I haven't heard them, Diaz, in so long.
Well, it's been so long since I've given some memories that I'm going to go back even further than recent events. Unfortunately, we need to acknowledge the passing of a great actor, James Earl Jones, who played a very significant role as Terrence Mann in The Field of Dreams. That movie was on last night. As all men do, at the ending of it, I bawled my silly little eyes out. And as not most men do after that, I then went on a nostalgia hole of just baseball history. For some reason, I got really fixated on the 94 season, the strike-shortened season. The headline item that I think most baseball sickos remember is the Expos were the best team in baseball. Yeah. That was probably going to be their year. And who knows, if that season were allowed to play out, we might not have the Washington Nationals. We might still have the Montreal Expos. The whole landscape of MLB is probably radically different if that season is allowed to play out. But it's not the only interesting thing about the 94 season. There's a couple other headline items that I just want to go down. First of all, the AL West that year was probably the worst division in the history of baseball. The Texas Rangers were 10 games under 500 when the season was suspended, yet they found themselves in first place as the leaders of the AL West at 52-62. We're also in a time when there was only 4 teams in the division, so you had the Oakland A's, were only a game back at 51-63. Seattle Mariners were 49-63. They're only 2 games back. And your last place, California Angels, still only 5.5 games back at 47 and 68. Just truly a disgusting division of baseball teams.
See, that's why Perry Manasian runs the team the way that he does now. He saw the 94 season and no other one and said, yeah, they were pretty close then.
Just knocking on the doorstep. And the torchbearer, as the Angels are now the team with the generational talents that can't win shit. The Seattle Mariners, at least for that season, were doing a pretty good job of occupying that space because Ken Griffey Jr. was having himself a hell of a season when it got suspended. He had 40 homers in 111 games, which put him on pace for 59 homers if he was to play out a 162-game season. So the great home run race of 98 might not have happened if Ken Griffey Jr. found his stride then. But those 40 homers were only enough to lead the American League. Would either of you like to guess the leader for home runs in the National League for the 94 season?
Is it too easy if you give us a team?
I don't think it's too easy. I'll hold off on giving the team for now because I do think the team could be misleading.
Was Juan Gonzalez around at that point?
I think he was on the Detroit Tigers still. It's also not him.
It's not Albert Bell. I don't think he ever played in the National League.
I'll give you the team. And again, the team on its surface is going to seem misleading. The San Francisco Giants.
Is it Jeff Kent?
It's not Jeff Kent.
Just tell us, Diaz.
It is a motherfucker by the name of Matt Williams.
Matt Williams! God damn, that's
was he on steroids?
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, who's to say? Who's to say? What I can say is Matt Williams, probably in the original vision of this podcast, we've become more of a sports history podcast, obscure figures that deserve being enlightened. But the original idea of X was a problem. Matt Williams was a problem. 5-time All-Star, twice finished in the top 3 of MVP voting, and for 112 games in that season, he had 43 homers, which, if you do the math, comes out to a pace of exactly 62 home runs, if that season were allowed to play out. It was the only season in which he ever hit more than 40 home runs. He had 4 other 30-plus homer seasons, but that's the only time that he ever eclipsed 40, and he finished his career with 378 homers, in a 17-year career that did see him be a one-time World Series champion, riding the coattails of Hall of Guy inductee Damian Miller with the 2001 Diamondbacks. He was
that Diamondbacks team is so fun.
He was in an outfield platoon out there. So
if they beat anybody else, I would love that Diamondbacks team, except for the one person on that team that blocked Justin Diaz on Twitter that one time.
I mean, I would still love the team. You can enjoy that roster independent of what Curt Schilling has become.
Look, I love
but they have
the
possibly the worst person in the last 30 years of baseball on their team.
It's hard to think of anybody.
Bad. Aubrey Huff's pretty bad. On an interpersonal, with other human being levels,
okay.
Aubrey Huff is a pretty.
If you put Aubrey Huff and Curt Schilling in a room together, which one of them defrauded an entire state of $100 million? Plus, got himself not inducted to the Hall of Fame for being so incredibly terrible. Aubrey Huff, at least his terribleness as a person matches his terribleness as a baseball player.
He has also lost the title of most divorced man in the world to Elon Musk. So, he does not have that anymore.
I mean, the thing that I say that I think puts Curt over the top, and not to get too bleak or whatever, but making public your dying teammate's cancer diagnosis against his wishes and his wife's wishes is about as reprehensible of a thing as you can do on a strict interpersonal level. Without committing genocide, that might be the worst thing you can do. So I'll give that.
Oh, also, wait, sorry, it's Wander Franco. Now we can move on, but it's actually Wander Franco.
That's pretty.
Do we know?
There's one of these two for crimes, and we're moving on.
I was gonna say, do we know if Curt Schilling is a pedophile or not? But I guess we don't. We
know for a fact that one of them was found to be by a court of law.
I'll just quote the Boondocks episode, and this is not in reference to Curt Schilling. I just happen to want to say it right now. The absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
For sure.
But yeah, anyway, Matt Williams, crazy. And
Williams. Yes.
Who is Pat Burrell, but Pat Burrell only even made one All-Star game and never had a 40 home run season. I'm trying to think Josh Hamilton maybe works.
Josh Hamilton's got an MVP. Josh Hamilton almost might be 2 up there. I kind of like Prince Fielder. Like Prince Fielder had a run there, and then it fell off. Has a couple different teams he's associated with. Like, he's not all Tigers, he's not all Brewers, he's not all Rangers.
Oh, dude, who was the third baseman for the Giants that was like equally fat as shit?
Pablo Sandoval.
Pablo Sandoval.
Yes.
The Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
Dude,
World Series MVP.
He like disappeared for 5 years and then was randomly making diving stops for the Giants again. It was the craziest thing I'd ever seen.
First, he and Hanley Ramirez got like the single worst pair of contracts I've ever seen a team hand out by the Boston Red Sox in one offseason. And I fucking loved it. And then they were smart enough to like actually eat that money and get rid of them, which sucked for me, someone that hates them.
This is so funny. I'm looking at Pablo Sandoval's stats right now. In his first 4 years as a professional, he put up a 4-WAR season and a 6-WAR season, along with 2 1-WAR seasons. After that, 2-2-3, negative 0.5, negative 0.2, negative 0.9, negative 0.5, the Boston years. So he was worth negative 2 wins for Boston.
Beautiful.
And then came back to the Giants for 4 more years and was worth a combined 0.05.
I'm shocked that he was with them for 4 more years after that.
2017, 18, 19, and 20.
Damn.
Put that on his Wall of Fame plaque in San Francisco. Above replacement in both stints with the Giants.
14 seasons, 19 WAR total.
Like I always said, he'll get you 1. You got to get the other like 80, 90 on your own. But he'll get you 1.
Well, and that's the memories for one of us. Xavier, I'd love to hear what you have going on.
Yeah, I also didn't get a chance to talk about things last week, so I'm going to kind of rapid fire through some of these. One, I was really excited about the U.S. Open semifinals, and then everything ended poorly for Americans, which is sad. I would have loved at least Tiafoe making the finals. We've talked about this off air, but of the Americans to get that far, it was essentially billionaires and rich kids, and then Tiafoe. So it would have been really cool to see that. So that was disappointing.
Ran out of gas, man. 5th set, just ran out of gas.
I've watched enough of his matches. I don't understand. He looks like he's in such incredible shape, but it's always, if he gets to a 5th set, he struggles terribly.
Well, what you need to think about is like, it's not on this level, but I make the comparisons like Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder is cut like a Greek god, but that means that he has bigger muscles that require more oxygen to fuel them versus a person like Tyson Fury, not as defined, but because he's not as defined, it doesn't require as much oxygen to fuel his muscles. I'm not a physical anything. I don't know shit, but this is just kind of like my understanding of how that works.
Well, hopefully he can, go on from here and get back that far, because I would love to see Tiafoe break that streak. American men not winning jack shit in 20 years. Do you know who Croy Bethune is?
Nope. Can't say the do.
Is that one half of the founders of Bethune-Cookman?
No. Croy Bethune is a rookie in the NWSL for the Washington Spirit. In 17 games, she had 5 goals and 10 assists, which tied the league record for assists in a season in 17 games as a rookie. And there are plenty of games left in the season. Unfortunately, Croy Bethune will not be able to participate in any of those, because she threw out the first pitch at a Nats game and tore her meniscus doing that and is out for the rest of the season. Yes.
Is that better or worse than Edwin Diaz getting injured in Celebration? You two as Puerto Ricans?
At least he was celebrating the sport that he plays.
Dude, the Edwin Diaz thing was like, it really went from we're winning the World Baseball Classic to we are not winning the World Baseball Classic in like 2 seconds.
But yeah, Croy Bethune was going to set insane records, is probably still going to win Rookie of the Year, but is going to miss essentially a third of the season because she threw out a first pitch in a Nats game. Which, watching the Nats this year is punishment enough. Like, having that happen too is literally adding injury to insult.
This is why we need the first pitches to be stupider, like when we have the players' kids and shit throw it out. Like, we should not have actual athletes going out there.
Big arm Ludacris.
Yeah, give me big arm Ludacris, give me Grimace, give me that shit. Don't give me fucking like someone whose physical health I care about on an emotional level.
That's sad, so let's switch to something nice. The best couple in track and field. Paralympics, still important. Last week, Hunter Woodhall, who is one half of the coolest track couple, won the gold in the Paralympics for the 400 meter. For people who do not know, his wife is Tara Davis Woodhall, who won the gold medal in the long jump for the U.S. at the Olympics last month. They are just such a fun couple together. They do a lot of content online, and they just seem so wholesome. And the fact that they're both gold medalists now is so fun. And there's a really good article in The Athletic about them, about how they first met, how he, I believe, became the first person without legs to get a D1 track scholarship in America. I think it was Arkansas that he went to. And when they met, she had no idea that he did not have legs, which is a wild thing to find out a couple dates in. But they're fantastic. I'm so happy for the both of them. Look into that article. It's really good. Last thing, to switch to soccer real quick. 2 quick things. 1, Leicester City. We're supposed to get docked 10 points for blatantly violating the profit and sustainability rules before they were relegated, and were then, promptly promoted again with their team that they broke rules to spend. They got off last week on appeal on a weird technicality. The year that they broke the spending rules for was the year they were getting relegated. They had reached out to the Premier League because they allowed you to change your financial year to end of May, end of June, or end of July. And theirs was end of May. And they asked if they could change it to end of June because their hope was to sell some players in June to possibly, not break the rules. Didn't work, and they get relegated. On this appeal, their lawyer pointed out, and this was agreed to by the independent appeal panel, that because they were required to turn over their shares of the Premier League on June 13th and were not officially given membership in the English Football League that runs the Championship, League One, and League Two until after June 30th, the financial year ending in June 30th, where they violated the profit and sustainability rules, they did not exist as a team under the purview of either the Premier League or the EFL. So by having reached out to change their financial year end from May to June, they no longer existed in terms of regulation by English soccer.
They created a month-long purge for themselves.
Yes, they became essentially Schrodinger's team, where they existed but didn't exist at the same time. And the Premier League were like, you clearly understood what the point of the rules are. You know this. And their lawyer's response was, well, you should have drafted your law better. And the panel said, he's right. We get what the spirit of the law is and what you intended, but by allowing them to change their year end to June, it means you had no authority over them.
What's the best kind of correct? Would you mind reminding me?
Technically correct.
There it is.
And then the last thing I want to talk about, Spurs midfielder Rodrigo Bentancur was just charged by the English FA over a racist remark. The reporting is that if this charge is sustained, he could get banned 6 to 12 games, which if it's 12, that's a third of the season for one of their best midfielders. But the thing that makes this newsworthy is what this charge came from. Over the summer, he was doing an interview and was talking about his team captain and best player on Spurs, Son Heung-min, and in his words made a joke during this where he said that, paraphrasing here, Son and South Koreans all look the same. He apologized on Instagram to Son specifically, who apparently accepted his apology and they moved on, and Spurs put out a statement. But the FA and the anti-discrimination charity Kick It Out received a whole ton of complaints from South Korean fans who he never apologized to. He specifically only apologized to his teammate. And so now there is a good chance this man gets suspended for 2 to 3 months for being racist against his own teammate.
I'm not going to say, I don't know. I think it is fair. The more I think about it, nah, man. Like, I don't know.
I think it's
don't
very
make that
fair.
fucking joke. Yeah, like, don't make that fucking joke.
Obviously, I'm biased, but I think it's fair in that if you make a racist remark about one person and also an entire ethnicity of people at the same time you're doing it, even if you apologize to that one person, anyone else who hears you is going to be like, hey, that's still fucked up. There's more victims, more people affected than just one when there's a public racist remark like that. It's not making a joke in private to someone that you realize was in bad taste, apologizing, and he accepts it. It's different. So we'll see what happens with that, but it's rare that you see something like this, especially when we had Enzo Fernandez of Chelsea do racist chants on the Argentinian team bus against French players of African descent and was rewarded by it by being named captain of Chelsea. I'd rather this way of dealing with it than that way of dealing with it, but I guess we'll see what happens.
We'll wait and see. It sounds like, again, remain vindicated in not deciding to just root for the other Spurs when thinking about soccer. So I'll go as quick as I can with making memories. 2 things that happened and 1 thing that didn't happen. The 2 things that happened. There's a beer hockey league in Florida. And this one team, the Beer League Leafs, as their name, they get to the title game. They're going up against the 5-time champions. Couldn't find the name of that team, but clearly ringers all. And problem with the Beer League Leafs, they do not have a goalie. So here in South Florida, they put out a call on Facebook, and they do indeed find a goalie for this title match. And that goalie's name is Roberto Luongo, Panthers and Canucks legend, who did step into this beer league and help them win 4-2. Shoutouts to whoever scored the 2 goals against Roberto Luongo on that other team. Once I found out that the other team was 5-time champions, I felt a lot better about this, because at first I was like, man, that's a pretty big competitive disadvantage. Absolutely love Roberto Luongo. Also love Cale Wilcox. Cale Wilcox is a female cyclist. And I'll preface this by saying that since March 2020, when I started taking cycling more seriously, probably biked about 18,000 miles, give or take. Cale Wilcox just did that in 108 days, 12 hours, and 12 minutes. And we know that because that is her official time for circumnavigating the globe on her bike. That is a new record, breaking the previous record set by Jenny Graham by 16 days for 14 hours a day. Cale biked approximately 175, which has got to be an insane calorie intake. I have no idea how she managed just to eat that much. For the record, obviously, there are some flights involved with this, but only 4. She starts in Chicago, bikes all the way to New York to Portugal, there's a flight, bikes all the way to the edge of Georgia, at which point, longitude-wise, she's lined up with Australia, so she took a flight to Perth in Australia, biked all the way across that, went from Brisbane to New Zealand, and then from New Zealand all the way to Anchorage, Alaska, and then biked the rest of the way from Alaska back to Chicago. Once again, 108 days, 12 hours, 12 minutes. Insane. And what's even more insane is there is currently a woman from India, Vendangi Kulkarni, who's already 65 days into her own world record attempt. So we will see in a month or 2 whether or not she beats that.
I give you 20 years until you try that, James.
Fuck no, dude. That's 175 every day for 108 days. I would rather never bike again than try and do that. One last thing that didn't happen. I listen to Baseball Barbercast a lot with the Cespedes Barbecue guys, and a topic they've brought up a number of times is when you see one of those foul balls, it's an absolute moonshot, just a little bit foul either way. And so it's this monstrous shot that you will have seen but will never officially exist in the records. And we had a similar thing in another sport. Brandon Aubrey is the place kicker for the Dallas Cowboys. Already, I think, a very fascinating guy. Used to play football, and now he plays football. Predictably became a place kicker, and as a 28-year-old rookie last year, made both the Pro Bowl and first-team All-Pro as the place kicker. So great start to the career, even at the age of 28. This year, the 29-year-old was lined up against Cleveland late in the game where, hey, we're up enough. Let's let him try a record-setting field goal. A record-tying field goal, I should say. He was set up for a 66.
End of the first half. End of the first
half. My apologies. End of the first half. God, they were already up that much at the end of the first half. Jesus Christ. Cleveland sucks this year, dude. Love it. Anyway, up steps Brandon Aubrey. Take this kick. And the thing about Justin Tucker, Baltimore Ravens legend, who has the current record for 66 yards, he kicked it inside and it hit the crossbar. It bounced someone over the crossbar, absolutely counts. He kicked it exactly 66 yards. Brandon Aubrey's kick was good by a couple yards, honestly. Like, Brandon Aubrey's kick went all the way through the uprights, no question whatsoever, except for the yellow flags on the field because Dallas had committed a delay of game penalty. And so this record-tying kick, and look, this was also outside. This was the best kick of all time. If this had gone through, this would be the new greatest field goal of all time. And it was wiped away. But there it was. We all saw it. We all know it happened. And I just wanted to talk about this for a split second because I was thinking back to something that we said in our conversation with Josie Reisman about how, like, the way that we reclaim sports from the bastards that have tried to take it away from society is through what we do here, because this is an extension of the oral tradition. And essentially the way that we all share sports and the way that we have it that they cannot take away from us is that oral tradition that we all maintain every day. And this is one of those things that, again, like, record books will never show this happened. Sure, if you go the full play-by-play, you'll be able to see that there was a kick that was good, nullified by a penalty. But it's not going to say that Brandon Aubrey had this field goal. But we know that he did, and we'll be able to remember that. So that's what's making memories for me right now. With that being said, Diaz, I believe, with your grand return here to the show, it is your time to kick us off for what we got today.
It is, but like, just on kicking, again, real quickly, let me say, Mike McCarthy, 100% a coward. You should have put him back out there for 71. Because
let him try. What the fuck's the harm?
The first one would have been good from 71. And I'm not saying he would have done it again, knowing, oh, it's a little further. Maybe he tries to kick it too hard. You give him the shot. Because what's going to happen? Are the Browns going to come back? Come on, let's be real. But anyway, we're on to our main topic, which is remembering guys. That's what we're all here to do. It's good for me to be back on American soil after a 2-week excursion into Europe. And look, Europe was awesome. London, Amsterdam, Florence, Tuscany. All that was amazing. But while I was there, I was thinking about guys, and I was thinking about specifically that when we think about history, sports, guys, it is very often through a European/United States lens is kind of the way that we see it. And that's just because that's what the media pushes forward. That's what we're exposed to the most. That's what we watch the most. And we try to keep a wide view here at RTG, but inevitably those biases will creep in. So I wanted to go ahead this week and specifically mandate that we look at the South American continent and that we focus on South American guys for this week. In continuing from our last normal episode where I put forth a builder, Tom Robinson, the inventor of water basketball. It was not the Dutch. Don't let anybody tell you that it was the Dutch, although they are wonderful people. Really love those Dutch people. But, Tom Robinson invented water basketball, and I want to focus on another guy this week who was initially drawn to the pool, but eventually put his focus towards creating a new sport of his own. So today we're going to talk about the founder of futsal, Juan Carlos Ceriani.
I'm assuming he spent a lot of time either at a beach or in small cages.
What?
Well, I mean, Xavier's along the right lines here, but, first, just for the uninitiated, which may be James among them, let's just give a quick little briefer on futsal, the sport.
Yeah, this is new to me.
First of all, the name comes from the portmanteau of the Spanish phrase fútbol de salón, or indoor football. At first, when the sport was created, it was just simply known as that, fútbol de salón. But There was a big dispute with FIFA. FIFA was saying, hey, that's not football. Don't call that football. It's definitely not football. So they said, okay, fine. It's not football. It's futsal. So they combined fútbol de salón, futsal, and that's how we get to the name of the sport. As the name implies, it is an indoor version of football. Played 5-on-5. There's 4 outfield players on each team and 1 goalie. The court is roughly the size of a basketball court, and subs are like ice hockey style. You come on, you come off whenever you want, free range for substitutions. The ball that they play with, as compared to a traditional football, is smaller and less bouncy, which results in an emphasis on dribbling skills and quick passing, which creates for a game with a lot of flair and a lot of showmanship. Rainbow flicks, where Guy will flick it backwards over his own head with the back of his heel. This is a very common futsal move. You see this sometimes in outdoor football. Its origins are in futsal. So there's been a lot of crossover with some of the more creative dribbling moves that we see now have their origins in futsal. And if you want to talk about at the highest level of this sport, there's two people that have a claim to be the GOAT of futsal. First off, there's Falcao. That's probably the more common exception. This is not the Colombian Falcao. This is the Brazilian Falcao, the strictly futsal playing Falcao, a completely different player. The other one, Falcao is probably more of your LeBron James, whereas your old heads are going to tell you that Manuel Tobias is actually the greatest futsal player of all time. And I watched some highlights, and he's already automatically my favorite Tobias to ever play sports. He is amazing. He's so good. He's definitely not Tobias Harris. I love it.
Just so I'm like getting the correct pictures, the fundamental difference between this and even like American indoor soccer is really just smaller court, and is the ball like, because I've watched more indoor soccer live, honestly, than like normal soccer.
Right.
Ball for that is like same as FIFA ball, or like this, like, because I know
think,
you're saying
like
that the futsal ball is different. Is that also different from an indoor soccer league ball?
So I don't remember exactly, because like I remember the Philadelphia Kicks. They were our indoor soccer team.
Baltimore Blast,
And
baby.
I think the ball it's the size of a futsal, but it retains the bounciness of a normal soccer ball.
Okay.
Whereas this one is like, again, not as bouncy, going to stay on the ground more. So yeah, a lot more emphasis on dribbling, quick passing. There are some players that can shoot from distance, like a guy like Falcao or a guy like Tobias. Their highlights are full of like ripping it from half court. But the goals are so small that you really do need to manipulate into tighter spaces before you take your shot, for the most part, unless you're the GOAT. And then if you're
There's
the GOAT,
also
rules
more
don't apply.
players in American indoor soccer. I think there's
Yeah, it's 7 on 7, I think.
Yeah, it's either one or two more in.
Okay.
Right, yeah. So yeah, slightly bigger field for your indoor soccer versus futsal is, again, exactly the size of a basketball court.
Exactly the size.
If you watch some old highlights of futsal from like the 80s and 90s, like it's literally like the 3-point line, the half court line, the foul line, like all that is still on the court.
It's a turf surface, or is it like a basketball surface?
Hardwood.
Okay, so it's fully on. It straight up just is a basketball court.
It is a basketball court, exactly.
Okay.
The modern surface might not necessarily be hardwood, but it's like a similar consistency, I guess.
No
is the
turf,
best word I
just
can think
like
of.
zero turf.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, not
So
turf.
you'll
Not
see old ones that are literally like, think Rucker Park cage, where it's blacktop and people doing tricks off the cage itself, depending on how
the cage is in play.
Depending on how formal it is, that like I'm sure in formal competitions you probably can't do that. But when people are just playing it, they'll do shit off the cage.
Cool.
Yeah, professional futsal is played, with boundaries. They don't do throws, they do kicks even from when it goes out. But where you'll see futsal played a lot is, like Xavier's saying, in these urban areas, densely populated, there aren't necessarily a ton of access to open fields where you can play normal soccer. So, throw a couple nets on either side, it's a cage, and they'll play futsal. So I actually, in Florence, I went past an active futsal game at one point. It was fascinating to watch. They were all very, very good, and I wasn't going to dare try to play. Would have been pretty embarrassing. I would have embarrassed our entire country, to be honest with you. It would have set U.S. futsal back at least a decade. All that to say, the greatest country at this sport is Brazil. The greatest players of this sport are Brazilian. Juan Carlos Ceriani is not Brazilian. He is Uruguayan, and he was born March 9th, 1907 in Montevideo, Uruguay. As a young adult, he was heavily involved with early versions of the YMCA in Uruguay, specifically with the swim club at the local YMCA. They founded that in 1930 in Montevideo, and they had moderate success. No swimmers that really competed on a national level, but just a good program, get people involved, get people healthy, all that kind of stuff.
Saying that you're heading down to the Y sounds a lot better than saying you're heading down to the Y.
No, Y does sound great. Maybe the modern YMCA could do with some rebranding there. Although with Spanish, wouldn't it be La Jota, joven?
Oh, see?
I do like La Jota, though. Let's go to La Jota. It sounds a little dirty, but like it's exciting. But, in 1930, they founded that swim club. Also in 1930, Uru-Guay played host to the inaugural World Cup of football, outdoor football, the sport that we're more familiar with. When the hosts claimed the title, Uru-Guay won the first World Cup. The sport surged in popularity across the whole country. But shortly after the World Cup, there's the cold winter months in Uru-Guay. And there's also just harsh winds in Montevideo, usually in the winter, which is our summer, again, just to, orient everybody. With those inclement conditions outdoors, Juan Carlos could have focused on further growing swimming, saying, hey, it's cold out there, the water's warm in here. But instead, he saw this burgeoning popularity of football and thought, how can we get people to play this year-round, even when it's cold outside, even when, it's raining, when it's inclement weather? How can we come up with a version of this sport to make sure it's able to be played year-round? So he set out to inventing and eventually set on the rule set for football de salon. Combined rules from a lot of different sports. As we've mentioned, it's played on a basketball court. The boundaries are the same as a basketball court. It also combines some rules of water polo in terms of how the goalies are able to move. And then most obviously soccer, only able to play with your feet. And settled on playing the sport 5-on-5. Largely, the game is very similar now to those initial rules. There's a couple of minor differences. The most obvious one being that in the original version of futsal, you were not allowed to shoot from within the penalty area, the crease, as it were. That was strictly for the goalie at first. In modern versions, you will see players like, if you watch a Falcao highlight, half of it is going to be him dribbling past every defender and then faking the goalie and then literally just walking it into the net. So they can do that now, but back then you had to shoot from a little range. After he invented this sport, it very quickly grew in popularity. As you might assume, Brazil being right there, they became an early adopter. And Juan Carlos kind of just became the advocate globally for this sport. Following the conclusion of World War II, he went to Europe to teach the sport there to help further the advancement in Europe. And he would also spread the sport in the United States while he was also furthering his own education. And he earned a degree in physical education from Springfield College in Massachusetts.
Yet another pioneer of sport related to Springfield, Massachusetts. Yeah. Decades after the other one. But once again, people who needed to find some kind of indoor sport finding their way to Springfield, Massachusetts.
Well, and then also not only that, but then you also consider, while Dr. Naismith invented basketball within the United States, he was a Canadian.
Yeah.
And just as futsal is, you ask anybody who knows about futsal, they'll be like, oh yeah, Brazil. It's the big version in Brazil. They love it in Brazil. An Uruguayan invented it, actually. So the same thing there, where we need to correct a couple misconceptions about the origins of some of these sports. After getting his degree from Springfield, he would join the World Committee for Athletics with Minors, which sought to enact athletics programs for youth throughout South America. And in 1955, he got the promotion up to the Big Y from the Little Y in Montevideo, started working with the international organization of the YMCA to help spread the word of futsal. And the sport just kind of steadily grew from there. Eventually, they had that dispute with FIFA where they weren't allowed to call it football, so they came up with futsal. Eventually, FIFA does recognize futsal as its own sport, and in 1989, they put on the first FIFA Futsal World Cup. It was played in the Netherlands, and while Juan Carlos got to see his sport played on the highest level, he did not get to see Uruguay play it, as they did not qualify coming out of South America.
That feels like an auto bid, guys. Come on.
It should be.
At least for the first one.
Right, exactly. Like, just a nod of acknowledgement, I would fully agree. They would start playing it every 4 years beginning in 92. Again, Uruguay did not qualify. It was not until 1996 that Uruguay qualified for their first Futsal World Cup. However, unfortunately, those games were played in November, and it was June 25th, 1996, at the age of 89, that Juan Carlos Ceriani passed away. Never got to see his native country play his sport on the biggest stage, but he did get to see his sport grow to the heights that it has now reached today. Since the mid-90s, futsal has been very popular, again, specifically in Brazil. But Uru-Guy has also, in recent years, become a more serious contender. Got a lot of silvers, got a couple third-place championships in there. But
much like Canada with basketball.
Exactly, just right on that precipice, but not quite able to knock down the door. But, the legacy of futsal is very strong. And, in the professional setting, as we mentioned, as Xavier mentioned, extremely popular in cities and urban areas where there isn't as much space to play a full, proper 11-a-side game. So the kids go to futsal. And even if you don't watch futsal, every time you're watching regular football and you see a rainbow flick or you see a slick dribble spin move, you know who to thank for that. You know to thank the inventor of futsal, the inventor of deft dribbling, and my guy this week, Juan Carlos Ceriani.
We do love builders and guys who invent very fun sports.
And I like learning about new sports. And I'm sorry that I have this blind spot. Honestly, sounds like it whips.
It's, two 20-minute halves, too. So it's like if you don't quite have the time for a full soccer game, like, look, a nice little tight 1-hour experience. You're going to see some crazy dribbling. It's very much like it is to soccer or regular football as like street hoops is to hardwood basketball. Like,
okay,
the sport largely the same, but there's just so much more flair, so much more emphasis on creativity, individuality within it.
And if you can't play, like Diaz being afraid to play with the Italians, you could play Volta on FIFA because Volta is a very fun mode that is just futsal.
Oh, it's awesome. And also, in real life, you do get penalized for fouls, but in Volta, you do not. So you can go 2 feet up and just take people out like I do. That's a lot of fun, too.
Like every person's first game playing FIFA where they only know the slide tackle button, except you never have to stop.
It's a one-button game if you want it to be.
Well, this won't be a one-guy episode. We've got 2 more, and I'll go ahead and lead off with the next one with a little statistic for you guys, because I do love me some numbers. As of 2023, 3 countries had 50 or more players who spent some amount of time on a 26-man Major League roster. U.S. leads the way with 999. It's about 72% of all MLB players U.S.-born. The Dominican Republic has 145, just over 10%. The other country with 50, so not Puerto Rico, which is on this list as its own thing, they've got 28. It's not Cuba, they've got 27. It's not Mexico, it's not Canada, Colombia, Panama, Japan, or Korea. Third is Venezuela.
Venezuela, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We all have a couple Venezuelan stars that we love right now. Down in Baltimore, I've got newly minted 40 home run hitter Anthony Santander. In New York, you got Oswaldo Cabrera right now. Philly, you got Ranger Suarez.
Labor.
I don't like him. I like Oswaldo Cabrera.
Yeah, but if you're gonna say who the Yankees got, it's gonna be their leadoff hitter and guy who's been
listed
in the
one I
organization
wanted
for 10
to list,
years.
Xavier. I made a conscious decision. You want to be an embittered Yankees fan? Guess what? You've already done that by being a Yankees fan. It's built in. Anyway, this Venezuelan superiority was not always the case. The very first Latin-born player to make it to the majors was Lou Castro from Colombia. And then for the next couple decades, it was mostly Cuban and Caribbean players. They were providing that Latin flavor. And then in the 1930s, the Washington Senators start really beefing up their Latin scouting. And this results in them eventually finding Alex Carrasquel, bringing him up in 39 as the first Venezuelan. He's a solid reliever for them all throughout World War II. Another big bonus was that players born in Venezuela could not be drafted into World War II. So if you signed them, you knew you were going to have them for that whole time. There was a couple other big baseball moments for the country during that period. In 1941, their national team participates in the 4th ever Copa Mundial in Havana, where they topple the Cuban team in Havana for their first ever title, and first Venezuelan moment on a big stage. Los Héroes del 41 is what this team is now known as. Later on, we do have a couple other Latin American players coming up again because of that draft. We have the second Venezuelan, Chucho Ramos, brief stint in 1944. But then we have to wait all the way until 1950 for our third Venezuelan, and my guy today, Chico Carrasquel.
Love a Chico. Love a
It is a Chico. It won't surprise you that Chico's not his real first name, but we will often refer to him as Chico here.
No, do you think the guy from Bad News Bears, do you think Chico's bail bonds was run by Chico?
Honestly, you could sell me on that. Chico's real name is Alfonso Colon Carrasquel. Colon is his father's name, Cristobal Colon. An unfortunate name, but hey, we deal with it. The other last name, Carrasquel, probably sounds a little bit familiar because Alex or Alejandro Carrasquel, that first Venezuelan-born MLB player, is the brother of Alfonso's mother, Maria. And so he is the nephew of like the only Venezuelan ball player as he's growing up, which is huge for him back home. And that's why he, in Venezuela, gets the nickname El Sobrino, which literally translates to the nephew. That's his nickname, at least in Venezuela. Outside of the country, he starts to become known as El Gato de Venezuela, or the cat, due to this really agile cat-like play at shortstop that he's demonstrating at the time. He's come into the game starting around 17 when he's playing for local teams in Caracas, the capital of the country. One is sponsored by the city's electricity utility, Electricidad de Caracas. Great name. Not quite as good as the other main pro team that he plays, Cerveceria de Caracas, which for non-Hispanohablantes means brewery of Caracas. This is a team literally just sponsored by a beer company as a throwback to the beer league hockey that we had in Making Memories. That is what is
Milwaukee Brewers.
Milwaukee Brewers as well. And like the Cerveceria is a very, very good team at this point, managed by his uncle, Alex, for a while. In 1946, the Cerveceria is one of 4 original pro-Venezuelan teams in La Liga Venezolana de Béisbol Profesional, which is still going to this day. And according to Wikipedia and a couple books that I wasn't able to get my hands on, I'm just making sure to say that like this is not as sourced as I would like it to be, but according to those sources, Chico is the very first player in Venezuelan pro history to hit a home run in that league. They end up winning 3 of the first 6 titles during his time there, but then they end up running a payroll so high that La Cerveceria has to divest and sell, and they become Leones de Caracas, which they still are today. They've gone on to win like 21 titles now for what it's worth. They are the dominant team in the league. But, you know, if he just stays in Venezuela forever and we don't get to learn about him elsewhere, that's not going to make for too much of a good guy. But luckily in 1948, other teams have started to take notice of Washington's wider Latin scouting operation. And there is one owner in particular who is known for exploiting the market efficiency of other teams not wanting to employ players with melanin, we'll say. And that's Branch Rickey of the Dodgers. So he sends a scout down in 48 to check out this Chico Carrasquel that they've heard about. The scout gets there and he doesn't have an address for Chico. He goes to his Caracas manager, who also does not have an address for Carrasquel. And so they just don't know at all how to get in touch with him. So the scout just chills in his hotel until the game's about to like begin, and then finally just goes to the stadium and waits outside the door trying to catch Carrasquel coming in, which he is able to. And then he has a business card. Carrasquel does not speak a word of English. He's able to, with his business card, spell out the word Dodgers. And that is international language at this time. He knows what Dodgers means. He's more than happy to sign the $10,000 contract that the next year brings him into spring training with the Dodgers, 1949. Baltimore legend Roy Campanella of the Negro League Elite Giants, who's then going to go on to play with the Dodgers. He played Mexican winter ball for a long time, so he's able to kind of serve as a translator for Carrasquel during spring training. But at this point, the Dodgers have Pee Wee Reese at shortstop. And so there's not really time at shortstop to be shared with Carrasquel. And so he has to go down to the AA Fort Worth Cats in Texas. And here in Texas, nobody speaks a lick of Spanish. And so he's just like languishing on the bench, completely unable to communicate with his manager or teammates. But you know what's another international language?
Ball?
Yeah, ball. Gonna warm up to the team by batting .315 over that season with 6 home runs and a very nice 69 RBI. And this is when he gets the nickname Chico, because this is a bunch of players who speak absolutely no Spanish, and that's the one thing that they learn eventually. So Chico Carrasquel is the name now. And like, I'm joking a little bit about the difficulty in connecting with people, but they, I think, make really honest attempts. There's this really nice like surprise reunion between him and his wife that the team organized in July. They fly her in without telling him to Dallas. Like, she gets to surprise him at a game. It's incredible. And the Dodgers have a pretty good season. They end up making the World Series before they lose 4-1 to the Yankees. And that leads us into the offseason. Branch Rickey's got some decisions to make. So he's talking with some other GMs, notably White Sox GM Frank Lane, who had a nickname Trader Frank, because he was a very, very active on the trade and free agent market kind of guy. So he's talking. He's got this guy Luke Appling at shortstop, who has been their starting shortstop since 1930. He is a team legend. Still batted .301 the year before. but he's 42 years old, and in the field, he looks 42 years old. That's kind of like what Frank is trying to address in this offseason. And so he's talking to Ricky, just kind of riffing. Ricky reportedly is just rattling off players and theoretical prices he would charge for him. And by his own admission, he's talking a little too fast. Because at one point, he just throws out Chico's name and the number 35,000, and Frank Mason pounces. Like, he does not let him get another sentence out. He hears Chico Carrasquel $35,000, says, yes, please, I'll take that price right now. And Ricky is too much of a man of his word, so he sticks to what he said, despite regretting this for many years afterwards. He does sell Chico Carrasquel to the Chicago White Sox for the princely sum of $35,000.
I'm all for holding people to things that they said very quickly without much thought. Like,
I
if you're going to be
honestly,
yeah, like, I mean, like, it's one of the most ethical ways to be rich is, damn, I gave you a good deal. Okay, fair play, you get it.
Yeah. I'm going to get beaten on some of these. I'm also Branch Rickey. Like, I'm going to win a World Series with these Dodgers.
I respect it.
It is 1950 now. Chico gets to the Chicago White Sox training, and he battles it out with Appling in spring for that starting role, wins it outright, ending a 2-decade-long run at shortstop by the vet. He makes the opening day roster, first person to do that since 1929 that is not named Luke Appling. And this is when, promised earlier on, in 1950, he becomes the third Venezuelan to debut in the major leagues. To deal with the language barrier, Trader Frank, always active, he went out and he got a Cuban reliever, Guido Aloma, to just like be the translator of the team. That's all well and good. Do you want to guess who they gave up?
No idea.
In 1949, the Chicago White Sox employed Chico's uncle, Alex Carrasquel. And then they traded him to get a different relief pitcher to be the translator for Chico Carrasquel.
That's
fun. Chico's an amazing season. Bats .282, outstanding defense at shortstop, has a 24-game hit streak at one point. He plays in almost every single game till a September knee injury. It's phenomenal. Also, in this year, he has at one point in Yankee Stadium where he is celebrated. Not his home field. They're celebrating Yankee Stadium. And this is the brainchild of a State Department ambassador, Walter Donnelly. It's Cold War time right now. There's some Cold War propaganda going on. And in order to combat communist influence in Venezuela at the time, they decided we should have a day to celebrate how much opportunity there is in this country. You too, Venezuelans, if you toil away at baseball, can be bought and sold to win games for a bunch of primarily white owners up here in America. So it's just this huge day where he is feted at Yankee Stadium to be the peak of how good capitalism can be. Don't you dare become communist, South America. Ends up finishing altogether third in Rookie of the Year. Second's Whitey Ford versus an all-time one-hit wonder and Serbian legend, Walt Drapo, who I hope I get a chance to talk about someday. But all of this to say, a phenomenal debut that only leads to more success. 1951, halfway through the season, he has formed such a strong double-play duo with his teammate Nellie Fox that the two are voted All-Star Game starters. Meaning, first off, he's the first ever Latin-born All-Star in MLB history. He also bumps reigning MVP Phil Rizzuto of the Yankees out of the starting lineup. And then also around midseason, he does make an error against those same Yankees, which was notable because he had not made an error in 297 chances over the previous 53 games, which broke the record, a record that had been set the year prior by Phil Rizzuto. This whole time, he's not just being up on Phil Rizzuto and being a star here in America. He is a national hero every time he goes home, which he does every offseason to play in that Venezuelan Winter League. And that admittedly will have some wear and tear on him throughout the years. In 52, he has a broken finger pretty early on just from not having taken a day off of baseball really in a couple years. So it's a bit of a down year. But then from 53 to 55, 3 more consecutive All-Star games at shortstop, making him a 4-time All-Star altogether. And at this point, he is playing such a good shortstop that it is influencing the entire country of Venezuela. Because there have been a lot of other good Venezuelan shortstops. Just a brief list. I know I'm going to miss some. We don't need to go through all the other ones I'm not listening. But Dave Concepcion, Ozzie Guillen, Elvis Andrus. In particular, there's one guy, Luis Sojo, a countryman of his, who I have this quote from: "When you talk about shortstop in Venezuela, you mean him," referring to Chico. All the Venezuelan players wanted to play shortstop because of him. And again, this is because he is a star in America, but he's still coming back every single year. And at this point now, through the mid-50s, it is really starting to affect not just his body, but according to the new manager, Marty Marion, his effort. Marty Marion does not really jive with Chico Carrasquel when he comes into the team. And there's also a kind of double-edged sword because of Chico's influence. His connection to Venezuela has set Chicago up with his successor, Luis Aparicio. He convinced Luis to come play for Chicago because of his influence. They went out and signed Luis, and now Luis is set to step right into his role. It's a little bit bittersweet. He is happy for Aparicio, very, very openly, thrilled that he gets it. And he mentioned it was probably good that they were going to have distance between him and manager Marion. As an indication of his value, he's still a very big trade chip. Him and teammate Jim Busby are enough as a package to get Larry Doby from the Cleveland baseball team right after Larry Doby had led the American League in hits. So he is coming over to form the first ever Hispanic double play duo now in Cleveland with teammate Bobby Avila. In these subsequent seasons, he's still a good baseball player, but he is no longer really at an all-star level. I just want to hit on a couple highlights from Cleveland. He has won 7 RBI game, which is his career high, on April 26, 1956. August of that year, 1956, he has his first and only 2 home run game. And then in July of the next year, he becomes the second ever Hispanic player to reach the 1,000 hit mark, the first being his teammate, Bobby Avila. There's a weird sequence then in terms of his transactions. Cleveland, as an organization, hires Frank Lane, the GM that got him originally. He brings in manager Bobby Brogan, who had been Chico's skipper in Fort Worth when he was back in Double-A. And they have a season of playing him almost every single day. And then they just trade him the next year to the Kansas City Athletics for Billy Hunter, who was the shortstop in Fort Worth that took over after Carrasquel got traded. So his old GM came in, hired his old field manager, and eventually fired him for the guy that had replaced him in the minor leagues a decade ago. Finishes out 58 with Kansas City. And then finally, after 1958, he was traded to a fledgling franchise, those Birds down in Baltimore, the New Orioles organization, where he plays his final 114 major league games that season. He's re-signed by Chicago in 1960, but he's cut before spring training. So that ends his major league career at 10 years with 1,325 games. It's totally solid 258 average during that time, 82 OPS plus, 21.4 B-WAR, almost perfect 50-50 split between offensive and defensive WAR on that. And just to give an idea of what Baseball Reference thinks of him, the closest similarity scores are with Andrelton Simmons, who is one of the greatest defensive shortstops of all time at his peak, and then Hall of Guy inductee Bucky Dent. That is what he finishes up with in the majors. He still plays until 1967 in the Venezuelan League, and then just remains basically involved with Venezuelan baseball and Chicago baseball for the rest of his life after his retirement. He is the color commentator for the Spanish Chicago White Sox broadcast from 1990 to 1996. During that time, his nephew also made the major leagues for a very, very brief cup of coffee in 1992. Unfortunately, he came up 2 weeks after the White Sox and Rangers, who will employ Chris Colon, his nephew, had played. So he never gets to overlap with him, but nice that the nephew also has his nephew eventually make it to the majors. Venezuela and the Chicago White Sox, in no small part because of Chico Carrasquel, also continue to have a really strong reputation with one another. From 1950 to 1997, between Carrasquel, Aparicio, and then future manager Ozzie Guillen, they were the shortstop for 29 of those 47 years altogether. In 2004, Guillen becomes the first ever Venezuelan manager in Major League history when he is named to the position for the Chicago White Sox, and they bring out a bunch of Venezuelan players for the first pitch. You get Luis Aparicio, you get Dave Concepcion, who we mentioned earlier, who's with the Cincinnati Reds, but still he recognizes the enormity of the moment. And here in 2004, you get the wheelchair-bound, but still determined to make it out to the mound, Chico Carrasquel on hand as well for that first pitch. It's about a year after these men are inducted into the inaugural class of the Venezuelan Hall of Fame, all of them. And it's also just about a year before Chico unfortunately dies due to a heart attack, related to his diabetes. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez announces not just 1, but 2 days of national mourning for the death of Chico Carrasquel. Such a national icon he is. 1 day is insufficient. He says he needs 2. And I mean, it's it was absurd going through this, how much more tied to the country of Venezuela the White Sox were than any other franchise. And I did not realize that. And it truly is because they just struck gold in this one trade that Branch Rickey himself admitted later on that he hugely regretted. And I just want to finish up with one final quote from Ozzie Guillen, one of those shortstops that took his inspiration from our boy. I don't think he was the greatest player to ever come from the country, but to me, he was the greatest man to come from Venezuela. And Ozzie, I will go even further. I would say he's Venezuela's greatest guy, and I hope the two of you are going to agree. That's Chico Carrasquel.
I'm glad that Chico Carrasquel got to be, we go back to a previous thing, the archetype founder. And all I could think is the extremely prolific and great Latino baseball player who nonetheless is criticized as lazy in the press. Probably just because he's Latino.
The guy who plays baseball professionally year-round is lazy. No, he's just fucking tired.
Right, and it's amazing how great he is at defense while also being lazy. The thing of baseball that requires the most movement is what he's best at, and yet he's also lazy. He should probably try not being Hispanic. I think then he would be not lazy.
Well, then I'm worried that our third guy today might also have a touch of laziness to him in the eyes of some of the public. But Xavier, I understand we do have one more Sudamerican.
Flojo.
So when Diaz picked this category, my mind immediately went to one person. We've briefly talked about him many times. It's about time we spend an entire segment on this guy. So let's finally discuss Pepe Sanchez.
Oh, Pepe. Good old Pepe. The greatest point guard in Temple basketball history.
We love Pepe, so this is going to be a good conversation for us, but I don't think it's going to be disputed that he's a guy, but we'll get into that. Juan Ignacio Sanchez Brown, a.k.a. Pepe Sanchez, was born May 8th, 1977 in Bahia Blanca, Argentina, about 8 hours southwest of Buenos Aires. When he was 12, he eschewed the traditional soccer path that most young Argentinians follow, and instead started playing for the youth team for the local basketball side, Club Bahiense del Norte. I don't know what was in the water in Bahia Blanca, but Pepe was joined by Manu Ginobili, who was only 2 months younger than him. Fun fact, of the 15 ever NBA players from Argentina, 3 were born within a 2-month span in 1977, with Pablo Prigioni being 9 days younger than Pepe Sanchez. So
Bahia Blanca is the Akron of Argentina, is what we're getting at here.
I guess so. 3 of 15 NBA players born essentially the same time, 2 of them in the same not big city of Argentina. Absolutely wild.
And you said NBA, so we're not including Luis Scola, who I imagine maybe not right around that time, but within a couple of years.
Luis Scola a bit younger, I believe. Yeah, 1980, so he's 3 years younger.
Okay, so 3-year stretch with 4 of the 15 presumably greatest, 4 of the 16, presumably greatest players in Argentinian history.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. There's even more because Andres Nocioni was born in 79. So it's a third of all NBA players in Argentinian history were born in
the first Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back.
Yes, absolutely crazy. Back to Pepe. When he turned 17, he turned professional and moved to Deportivo Roca. The next year, he returned home and played for his local Estudiantes de Bahia Blanca for the 95-96 season. After participating in the 96 Youth Pan American Tournament in Puerto Rico, Pepe made the jump stateside after getting a scholarship offer from John Chaney. Temple at this point was coming off a second-round NCAA exit to Cincy and needed to replace their graduating senior guard, Levon Alston. Yes, that is Shiz's dad. Shout out to Shiz, who is still playing right now. Chaney, not someone who plays freshmen. During the 95-96 season, didn't have a single freshman in the rotation. But Pepe was unique and was not going to be denied a spot in the lineup. He starts all 31 games his freshman season, averaging 38 minutes per game, tied with Mark Jackson for most on the team. He averaged 10 points, 5 assists, 4 boards, and 3 steals, which is absolutely nuts for a freshman. Temple once again makes it to the second round of the NCAA tournament before they lose to number 1 Minnesota. Minnesota later gets stripped of their Final Four appearance and Big Ten title for major academic fraud that made literally every single player on their team ineligible. So I say we should retroactively get a win there. And so I'm not counting that loss because literally their entire team cheated and got in massive trouble for it.
So there was a high school that we used to play, Coatesville, Richard Hamilton's high school. And if you played them early in the season, you were going to get fucking smoked every time. But if they were on the end of your schedule, after some grades came in, Q1 grades, then you have a real good shot.
That's terrible.
It's terrible, but I'm telling you, I'm not saying
it sounds pretty reliable, but Christ.
But when our schedules came out, that was the first thing you looked for. Did we play Coatesville early or late?
I mean, this scandal was so bad, it has its own Wikipedia page called University of Minnesota Basketball Scandal. And the NCAA findings were that an office manager prepared 400 pieces of coursework for at least 18 basketball players. Yeah, they cheated real bad. So John Shady and Pepe Sanchez screwed by a bunch of cheating Golden Gophers. But all we can do is take away those wins, like the NCAA has already done, and just we'll assume that Temple would have gone all the way. Next year, he again averages 10, 5, 4, and 3. What a stat line to have 2 years in a row. Temple wins the A-10 regular season title that year, but unfortunately they do get blown out by West Virginia in the first round of the NCAAs. Not great. So now we get to the 98-99 season. Pepe's junior season. Temple opens the season number 7 in the country. And just 10 days into the season, they welcome number 5, Michigan State, to the Apollo. For those who don't know, before it was the Liacouras Center, it was the Apollo. Temple really struggles to shoot the ball. They go 5 of 23 in the first half. And with 3.5 minutes left in the second, they're down 54-44. Over the next 2 minutes, Pepe leads Temple on a run to cut to 56-52 with 1:17 left. Then, down 5 with 56 seconds left, Pepe gets fouled taking a 3. He walks the line, sinks all 3. After Michigan State goes 1 of 2 from the line, Temple scores again to cut it to 59-58 with 26 seconds left. On the inbounds, Pepe forced a tie-up on Mateen Cleaves, All-American, really talented college basketball player. Temple gets the ball back. They miss a 3, but it goes out of bounds on Michigan State with 1 second left, and Temple has the ball under the basket. Pepe gets free underneath, and right when he has a chance to lay it up, gets dragged down from behind. Blatant foul to stop him.
Se la aferra como una sombra a Sánchez. Pepe bajo el aro. ¡Falta! Podría perder el partido el equipo de Michigan State.
Clock expires, but the refs give him the chance to go to the line for 2 free throws to tie or win. For all of our listeners who do not have the benefit of looking at this right now, he calmly steps to the line. He sinks the first free throw. Takes a breath, shoots the second.
Empata el partido. Las caras de Michigan State lo dice todo. Temple gana el partido cortesía de Pepe Sanchez.
Goes in, and he falls backwards directly onto the court. Temple wins 60-59. After the game, Pepe said, quote, "Everything just went so fast. I looked at the clock and knew I had to go to the basket. All of a sudden, I had the ball in my hands. That was the first time in my life I've had to make free throws to win a game. You don't even know. That's a lot of pressure. I think I'm pretty cold, and I felt chills all over." Tom Izzo said, "It's probably the most frustrating loss I've ever had as a head coach. Give Temple credit. Their guards did a great job, especially in the last 5 minutes, and ours didn't. They got some key steals, and Pepe Sanchez did a great job."
I mean, this is the other side of the Darius Washington coin.
This is what
the
Darius
exact opposite
Washington
side.
could have been.
Because it is, like, again, I don't, to emphasize, 0.0 on the clock as Pepe Sanchez shoots these free throws. And, like, Michigan State, like, lined up on the line, like, probably just for distraction. But honestly, now, as I'm thinking this through, the better move was probably what Louisville did to Darius Washington. And just, like, just you in the rim, bud. Nobody here to distract you. Nobody else to think about. I think also it lends to, like, you hear Eastern European players talk about, like, oh, how did you respond to the pressure of this moment? And, like, Jokic just said, brother, I'm from Serbia. And granted, Argentina's not Serbia, but he did play professional, meaningful basketball in front of hostile crowds already. So it's like 2 free throws, home crowd, bet.
I don't know if Temple and Pepe expelled too much emotional energy in this massive game against the top 5 opponent, but they did then lose 6 of their next 8 games before finally turning things around after the new year and winning 13 of their last 16 to get back to the A10 tournament final. They lose, unfortunately, to Rhode Island by 3 points at the Spectrum, but they get a bid to the NCAA tournament as a 6th seed. In the first round, Pepe leads Temple in scoring with 15 points, while also adding 9 assists, 6 boards, 3 steals, and a block, as Temple beats 11 seed Kent State 61-54. Then, in the second round, the hump that they have yet to get over for years at this point, Temple upsets 3 seed Cincy 64-54, with Pepe putting up 14, 7, and 2. This sets up a Sweet 16 match against Purdue, and this one isn't even a contest. Temple jumps out to a 47-32 halftime lead, and they end up winning 77-55. Pepe puts in possibly the best game of his life. 17 points, 9 assists, 6 boards, 6 steals, and a block. Absolutely ridiculous. And this gets Temple to a matchup with number 1 overall seed Duke, who were 35-1 and had won their first 3 tournament games by an average of 33 points. This team was absolutely stacked, and unfortunately, this game would continue that trend, as Duke, led by Elton Brand, Trajan Langdon, Shane Battier, and Corey Maggette, the 4 of whom combined for 58 points on 76% shooting, helped Duke win 85-64.
Man, how did Elton Brand ever get a job in this city after doing that shit?
Time heals all wounds. But that was a ridiculous... That Duke team was absolutely insane. Just ridiculous. But, Pepe still has 1 more season at Temple. During that 99-2000 senior season, he takes a step back as a scorer, still averages 6 points, 8 assists, 6 boards, and 3 steals. And he gets named 3rd team All-American by both the AP and the National Association of Basketball Coaches. To this day, he's still the most recent Temple men's basketball player to get All-American honors from any selectors. And getting All-American as a guard averaging 6 points is absolutely wild. But the rest of his all-around game, and especially his defense, it still doesn't feel like a weird choice to have him listed there. Temple, as a team that season, started slowly but ends on a roll, winning 14 of the last 15 games and then winning the A10 tournament, getting to the NCAAs as a 2 seed and number 5 overall. So a chance to get back to the Elite 8 or maybe even do better than that. In the first round against Lafayette, Pepe has a game that really encapsulates his entire career. He only took 3 shots the whole game, missed all 3 of them. But he had 15 assists, 5 rebounds, and 3 steals as Temple rolled to a 73-47 win. At the time, that was tied for 2nd most assists ever in an NCAA game. And again, he did not play a good portion of the second half. It's still 6th most ever. Absolutely wild. 15 assists in a college basketball game with the shorter periods and also not playing the whole game. After the game, John Chaney said of Pepe, quote, "It's the way I like to see the game played. It's not easy playing point guard at Temple, I'll tell you that." Pepe said, "I don't have a philosophy of not shooting the ball. I take the game the way it comes. If I have my shots, I take them. If not, I make my team work. That's the way I learned the game from coach." God, I love those John Chaney teams and the way they played. Unfortunately, in the second round against Seton Hall, the Pirates put on the best 3-point shooting performance in the history of the East Regional at the time. Ty Shine, a career backup who did not have an illustrious college career, did not start ever, comes in for an injured Shaheen Holloway and shoots 7 of 11 from 3, including a game-winning three-pointer with 18 seconds left in overtime in a 67-65 Seton Hall win. Pepe had fouled out in regulation and had to sit and watch as Lynn Greer's 3 at the buzzer bounces off the rim and out. And once again, Temple does not get past that second round in absolute heartbreaking fashion. Pepe said after the game, "We're very disappointed and I feel very empty. The tournament is very difficult to play in with a lot of pressure. I guess we were able to handle all the pressure and perform the way we had to perform. That makes us a good team, not a great team. We got what we deserved." It's really disappointing that Pepe and Mark Karcher, who ended up leaving early that season because of family commitments, couldn't be part of the 2000-2001 team that does make it back to the Elite Eight, because I think that team, with those two, might have been the best team in college basketball that year. You know, it is what it is with timing. The Mark Karcher one is actually even sadder because he just needed the money for his family. Even though he didn't get drafted, he still left a year early. It's neither here nor there. In Pepe's 4 years at Temple, he averaged 9 points, 5 boards, 6 assists, 3 steals. He was 2-time first-team All-A-10, 3 times A-10 All-Defense, 2-time A-10 Defensive Player of the Year, and A-10 Player of the Year during that 99-2000 season. Sports Reference, which I love very much, does have a way to list players by defensive win shares since they started tracking in 95-96, which is very helpful for Pepe Sanchez's career. And he is the 19th most valuable defensive player in the past 30 years of college basketball, in between Emeka Okafor and Ryan Humphrey.
That is way higher than I would have expected Ryan Humphrey to be.
It's fascinating, right?
Like, that's great for Pepe Sanchez. That's also bizarre for him.
While I was looking through the defensive win shares filter, there was a lot of good guys on that list, which I think that's another good way to be a guy, is if you're really good at defense and not good at scoring in a game like basketball. Again,
Do you have the list up? Can I guess names?
Yes. Okay. Where do you want to start?
I just want to guess names and if they're on the top 25, I guess. Hashim Thabit, I think, has to be up there.
He's 34th.
Okay, I'll take that. Al Horford. Al Horford feels like he's going to be on that list.
130th.
Let me try for
Wow,
the easy.
wait.
Edie? Zach Edie?
Oh, Zach Edey, true. Yeah. Just big guy that gets rebounds. And
Yeah, I'm not trying to be fancy about it. I'm just trying to take a high percentage shot.
He is not on the list, which means he's not in the top 250.
God damn.
That honestly makes me value this metric more, because big stiffs are not good defenders. That's honestly what makes it hard for me to like basketball defensive analytics. Is they're like, dude, Rudy Gobert's a fucking world-changing defender. I'm like, okay, why is it that every time it gets to the playoffs, every guard gets fucking barbecue chicken in their eyes anytime that they see him? But no, I respect this metric now. It is a good one because it values Pepe Sanchez and not unathletic stiffs.
Do you want me to just tell you the top 10?
Please.
Number 1, Joey Dorsey.
I remember
Number
him.
2,
Oh my God, yeah.
Number 2, David West.
Okay, yeah.
Number 3, Robert Dozier. Number 4, Mamadou Ndiaye. Number 5, Lamont Barnes, another Temple guy and teammate of Pepe Sanchez. Number 6, Sheldon Williams. Number 7, Kevin Lyde, another John Chaney Owl. We love John Chaney's teams.
Let it be said, Candace Parker's beard, Sheldon Williams.
Number 8, Kenyon Martin. Number 9, Shane Battier. Number 10, Jason Maxiel.
Oh, Jason Maxiel.
9 is good.
He had a fun couple years where it was like, maybe he can be as good as Ben Wallace. And then it was like, nah, he's not. He's really not.
So like I said, it's a fun list. I enjoy that list a lot. Back to Pepe. Despite his college accolades as a defense-first point guard, he does not get drafted in 2000, but gets signed by the Philadelphia 76ers as an undrafted free agent on October 2nd, 2000. So this is Temple and Sixers legend Pepe Sanchez. On October 31st, 2000, Pepe becomes the first Argentine to play in a regular season NBA game when he played 2 minutes and racked up 2 assists in a 101-72 blowout win over the Knicks.
That's a great per 36 APG.
Also, shout out to his teammate and Hall of Guy inductee Eric Snow from that Sixers team. Pepe was an end-of-the-bench piece for the Sixers before being traded alongside Tony Kukoc, Nazi Muhammad, and Theo Ratliff to the Hawks for Roshan McLeod and Dikembe Mutombo, which is a very fun trade. I like that trade.
It was a big trade. It was, honestly, that trade happened. I'll give you context as, as the locked-in 8-year-old following those Sixers. Theo Ratliff was actually the best defensive center in basketball that year, and then he broke his wrist, and he was maybe going to be back for the playoffs, but probably wasn't. So we were like, okay, we just lost our great defensive center. What if we trade him for another great defensive center? And unfortunately, Pepe gets caught in the crossfire. Or maybe he would have been the missing piece in the 0-1 finals. Sixers needed another creator out there. Eric Snow on his broken foot was really tough for him moving around. If there was somebody to feed Iverson the ball in his spots, I think that might have been the difference. The butter guy effect.
You know what's important is that 2 weeks later, he was waived by the Hawks, and 3 years after that, he is back with the Sixers because they did not have the prohibition on re-signing guys that you traded at that point. So he was on the Sixers, but did not play a minute after that.
Larry Brown's greatest failing. Yeah. Larry Brown's greatest failing.
So after this season, he moves to Greece looking for some regular playing time and plays 1 season there with Panathinaikos. And in that 1 season, he wins the EuroLeague, which is, pretty good bang for your buck there. He's so good in Greece that he gets more NBA calls, and he's back with the Detroit Pistons, where he appears in 9 games off the bench. He then gets traded to the Golden State Warriors along with Clifford Robinson for Bob Sura, but Golden State waives him shortly after, never appears with them. And that's the end of Pepe's NBA career. But there's still a lot to talk about. So Pepe spends the next 6 years in the Spanish League with Alicante, Unicaja, Malaga, Barcelona, and Real Madrid. His best season was 05-06 when he helped Unicaja to their first in-to-date only league title in their 50-year history, averaging 7 points, 5 boards, and 4 assists. And, I've been working chronologically, but now I'm going to jump back a bit because we can't talk about Pepe without talking about his career competing for his country. Pepe makes his senior debut with Argentina in 1998 and was included in the squad that went to the FIBA World Championship in Greece. Still young, he only averages 5 minutes off the bench for an Argentinian squad that makes it to the quarterfinals, which was really good for them, before losing to eventual champion Yugoslavia. During the 2002 World Championships in Indianapolis, Argentina beats the U.S. in the group stages, with Pepe chipping in with 9 points and 4 assists, and they make it all the way to the championship game, their best performance ever. They do meet Yugoslavia again, and it's a much closer contest this time, but they do lose 84-77 in overtime. And I was looking at that team, and God, could you imagine how ridiculous Yugoslavia would be right now if they still existed?
Well, let's think about it. You would have the Joker, you would have Luka, you would have the Bogdanoviches. I mean, Vasilija Micic in that context as a point guard to feed those guys would be amazing. Be quite a squad.
You're a really, really good team. So I know what everyone is waiting for. It's impossible to talk about Pepe in Argentina without talking about the 2004 Olympics. Manu and Luis Scola were the two-headed dragon leading Argentina, but Pepe was the glue guy for the team that beat the U.S. in the semifinals 89-81, causing what we know is the biggest national shame in U.S. basketball modern history, before going on to dominate Italy to win the gold medal, becoming the first Latin American team to get an Olympic gold in men's basketball. Pepe had 4 points and 7 assists in the semi against the U.S., and 3 points, 5 assists, and 4 boards in the gold medal match against Italy. After the USA game, Pepe was interviewed. There's a great quote that was immortalized in a Mike Wilbon article. He said, "It's time to give some credit to basketball players around the world. We can play the sport. Larry Bird and Magic Johnson were posters in your bedroom. Those guys were like a myth. These guys, referring to the 2004 U.S. team, are players. There's no fear of them. They're great players, too. They're the best team in the world in terms of individuals, don't get me wrong. But the game is 5-on-5, not 1-on-1. Not tennis. It's upsetting to keep hearing that these guys need time to adjust to the rules, and the international game is so different from them. Rules? A guy misses a jump shot from 3 wide open. What rule is that? You gotta be kidding me. They tried to play zone against us. We hit 2 threes. They had to stop playing zone. That's not having trouble with the rule. Hit a shot. The other team can't sit back in the zone. I love that.
That would have sounded so good in Spanish too.
I wish I had it in Spanish because it was. This is what you get for being so full of yourself and just assuming that everyone's going to roll down in front of you because you're NBA players, and then blaming, oh, it's a different game internationally for your loss when the other team said, we made shots, you missed shots. We adjusted defense, you didn't. That's not rules, that's you just being arrogant.
El problema no es la regla, el problema es que eres basura. Something like that.
Something like that. Technically, Pepe's best international tourney from a statistical standpoint was the 2006 World Championship, where he averages 7-6 and has 13 points at Argentina's 1-point loss to eventual champion Spain in semifinals, but everyone remembers the 2004 Olympics. Pepe chooses to retire from international play after those 2006 World Championships, much to the dismay of Manu, who said, quote, I'd hoped Pepe would retire after the Olympics. Without a doubt, it is an enormous loss for the national team and especially for me. Manu was really sad that Argentina didn't get to go defend their gold medal with Pepe in the squad. Even after leaving the international stage, Pepe continued to help grow basketball in Argentina. So in 2010, Pepe's old team, Estudiantes, ran into financial problems and sold their license in the top division to Pepe, who created a new team, Bahia Basket, to ensure that professional basketball stayed in Bahia Blanca, which, again, created 2 of the 3 best Argentinians in history, so they probably should have a basketball team. Pepe was the president of the team and played during the first 3 seasons to help get the club off the ground. From my research, today it looks like they're not in the top flight, but have kind of pivoted to focus on community development and youth and women's sports development in the area, which appears to be just like financial problems. Bahia Blanca is not a very wealthy city in a country where pretty much all sport is dominated by Buenos Aires. Like, if you take a look at their top division for basketball and soccer, half the teams are just Buenos Aires. So it's really hard to have any sort of financial power outside of there, but they're still around and they're still doing a lot of things. Pepe has also paid it forward with Temple. In 2008, he convinced Juan Fernandez to sign with Fran Dunphy in the Owls after Juan had emailed him for advice. Quote, I'm not the kind of guy who preaches about what people should do, but when kids like Juan ask me, I tell them my 2 greatest experiences in basketball was playing for my college team and my national team. The 2 times that money wasn't involved. It was about the chance to represent your school and your country. More than that, it just opened my mind to so much. When I spoke with Juan, it just struck me that he was the same, and that college was the right situation to him. I told him, regardless of what happens in basketball, whether he plays in the NBA, in Europe, whatever, going to college would make the biggest difference in his life. And through that, Pepe is indirectly responsible for the Juan Fernandez buzzer beater in the first round of the 2011 NCAA tourney against Penn State, which was also the first Temple basketball game I watched on TV after I decided to go to Temple University. So I was, an 18-year-old high school kid, super pumped. Oh my God, I'm going there. Oh my God, yes. Fuck Penn State. I don't know anyone who goes there, but fuck you anyway.
It was great, and it was especially great, coming from a Pennsylvania school where every worst person that you knew in high school, if you went to a Pennsylvania high school, went to Penn State. Fuck Penn State in perpetuity.
Fuck Penn State. Thank you, Pepe Sanchez, for what you did when you were playing and for getting us Juan Fernandez as well. In 2015, Pepe gets inducted into the Big 5 Hall of Fame. A year later, he's inducted into the Temple Basketball Ring of Honor in their inaugural 2016 class. And in the same year, he gets inducted into the Temple Sports Hall of Fame. A year after that, he starts a scholarship program for international students at Temple. He said, coming back to Temple, the first thing I thought about was the international students. I wanted to help the student who was me 20 years ago. Pepe big Temple guy, big Argentina guy, big glue guy, but the through line through all of that is he is a guy, and I think that we should honor Pepe Sanchez tonight during this deliberation.
And I thought of another fun thing that Pepe Sanchez might have said in Spanish while ranting about the U.S. team.
Yeah, sure.
El balón no minte. Little twist on some Rasheed Wallace for you.
3 guys, 3 Chicos. I know technically just the one Chico, but like in feeling, 3 Chicos right here. I love Juan Carlos Ceriani. Much of that is the love of futsal after hearing this story. And if I enjoyed that sport enough and we think that that's sufficient, like I'm not opposed to it at all, but like that's where the highest of marks from there go. I like you drawing the parallels between him and Naismith. I do enjoy that a lot. I think that was a very good angle. But like most of the attachment to that story is the growth of the sport of futsal and how cool that is to learn about.
Right. Yeah, it's the difficulty of it's the same difficulty I had with Tom Robinson, where it's like this dude was born around the turn of the 20th century.
It's tough to find stuff.
Around the 20th century, and like it's not even like, oh, he was born around the turn of the 20th century and played like a super well-known sport that became famous.
Or so even in America there, where a bunch of primary sources would be available.
Right, exactly. Like literally the majority of my research here was Spanish Wikipedia, which is great. I love flexing the Spanish, but even the Spanish Wikipedia was like maybe 400 words.
Damn.
So yeah, drawing it out was a little tough. We had to lean on the history of the sport. Yeah, I'm totally. As I was doing the research, I was like, this isn't a winner. This is a nice story, but this isn't a winner.
It's a great story.
I know when I've got a winner, and I know when I don't. And I love you, Juan Carlos, especially because my alter ego, when I play FIFA, my created character is always just an eponymous Juan Carlos. Not because of him, but it was a nice little touch when I learned like, oh, another Juan Carlos, game recognized game.
Well, that leaves us with 2, and frankly, like 2 incredibly similar guys. And one of them played for Temple and Philly and also played basketball. So like, I know I'm going to lose. That's fine. I will point out that Xavier had a lot of really great quotes in there, and a lot of them were from Pepe Sanchez. I would like to think I also had a few good quotes, and all of my quotes came from other people that were influenced by the career of Chico Carrasquel to go on and achieve greatness by themselves. Now the 2 of you may go ahead and vote for Pepe Sanchez. I'll see myself out.
No, I mean, look, I swear this isn't me teasing you, but like there is something to Chico being the first one to deal with all the bullshit racism that like then Clemente, who obviously I know so well and idolize. There's something to him being Trojan horse isn't the word that I want to use at all, but like the idea of like the first person through the gate.
The first wave, yeah.
The first wave, yeah. The first
vanguard.
person through the gate. Exactly. The first Latinos to land on the figurative Normandy beach of MLB and take all of the bullshit racism.
And I like one of these guys is at best like the 3rd best player in a golden generation of that sport. The other one is like the model ideal for an entire country that now produces the 3rd most major leaguers of any country in the world, and everyone in that country models their game after him, but also the first guy played basketball in the 1990s. So like I get it. I
mean, it's tough because it's like, I mean, again, it's going to be my vote, and like honestly, before Xavier said Pepe, I was so all about it. And like it is, I'm genuinely wrestling with it right now. Like this is not a layup for Pepe. This is not 2 free throws at the line with the clock expired. This is a tough one. Xavier,
you've not responded to my I won't call it quote slander.
I mean, I also had a John Chaney quotes about Pepe Sanchez. I mean, there are Juan Fernandez quotes about Pepe Sanchez that I didn't bring up because I didn't think it was necessary, because I had a lot of quotes, like I didn't want to just overload with quotes. But I mean, if we're talking about people influenced by Pepe Sanchez, it's like Argentinian basketball as a whole, which we could say is like, I'll agree, is not on the same plane as Venezuelan baseball, at least on a club level. Venezuelan baseball, despite their talent, has not done the same internationally that Argentinian basketball has.
I'm saying this because I genuinely don't remember, and I'm going to check real quick whether or not they have a WBC.
They definitely don't. It's been Japan has won, the U.S. has won.
Yeah, it's only made the semifinals once. That's my there you go.
I think it's Japan, U.S., and I think did DR win one?
Almost certain they did.
All I know is Puerto Rico has not won.
Yeah, Venezuela. I think the problem is that they've had a lot of players in the same.
They have a lot of players that want to play shortstop because there was one guy
middle infielders,
all of them, and his name was Chico Carrasquel.
Which is great for them for getting paid, not great for like team formation. Sure. But that's also harder in baseball, obviously, than in basketball. We only need 5. Their current roster is pretty good, but their infielders are 100% better than everyone else. Where they have Altuve, Arise, Rengifo, Eugenio Suarez, and Gleyber Torres,
all of whom came up as shortstops.
And then their pitchers, other than Ranger Suarez, are pretty bad.
Yeah, they've had Ranger and they had Felix, and that's it.
So I love Pepe Sanchez because when I started going to Temple, I was big into basketball. At that point in my life, I was a bigger basketball fan than I think anything else, just because it was the sport that I was playing on an intramural level, like outside of school and high school. And that's when I did all of my research into Temple basketball and learned all about John Chaney and all of the Temple legends, including Pepe Sanchez. So he has a special place in my heart. Like, I'm not going to be upset if you go with Chico Diaz, because I know it's a tough decision.
Well, here's what I'll say. Pepe Sanchez is probably my first favorite basketball player that wasn't Michael Jordan or Allen Iverson.
That's really high praise. I respect hearing that. Like, I am glad to know that he reaches that stature with you.
No, he certainly does, because like growing up in the Philadelphia region, everybody always says like, "Oh, the Big Five, the Big Five." Temple was like immediately the school that I gravitated towards, and like probably because they were the best when I was young. Like I am able to say that young Diaz was absolutely a bandwagoner, specifically within the Philadelphia context. Like, I'm in the city limits, baby. I'm gonna pick a winner. No, I love Pepe Sanchez, and especially because like his game felt attainable in a way that Jordan and Iverson's didn't to me, because like it was so like, yeah, you can be the super smart guy that sees the pass that nobody else does and plays annoying as shit defense. Like, you can absolutely be that guy. So I love Pepe Sanchez, and you know, it's kind of along the lines of what I said at the start of this podcast, where you know, our initial idea like maybe was like, oh, those like 90s early aughts players that like, oh yeah, that guy was a problem. However, that's not what the podcast has turned into. The podcast has turned into remembering super influential figures who are perhaps lost to history, but whose impact cannot be denied within their sport and within their field. And if we're going to go with that as the larger theme of the podcast, as the larger thing that we consider at this point, and also with the full knowledge that I do have a relitigation vote, and I can ensure that Pepe Sanchez will make it in at a later date. With all of those factors considered, and especially as the first Latino to deal with needless and like truly not just baseless, but opposite of truth racism.
If I may, the one thing I'll say, a lot of the Cubans had also faced that. The one other like major Latin source, we had specified like he was the third Venezuelan. A lot of Cubans also faced a lot of shit for that.
Right. And specifically within his context of like, hey, here's this guy that makes these crazy, amazing plays in the field. How could a person say with a straight face, yeah, but if he tried hard, he'd be even better? Like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, I don't need to have seen him make a single play to know that he got to thousands of balls that he had no business getting to. And that he was an archetype founder for this quick-handed, very slick with the glove Venezuelan shortstop that we have known to come and love. And with all of that being considered, I do have to give the vote to Pepe. No, I'm kidding. Chico Carrasquel. Welcome to the Hall of Fame.
It would have been like died laughing if you then also went with Pepe Sanchez. Like, it would have almost been worth it for the bit.
It's like sometimes, you know, you can think of the bit. Like, you know, some people thought it was a funny bit to consider Donald Trump as president in 2016. The bit, I could never deny, was always funny. But sometimes the bit doesn't have to become reality. You can just think about the bit. And then you can move on to the right choice, which is Chico Carrasquel.
Chico Carrasquel. Bienvenido. I am shocked and pleasantly surprised. I'm thrilled to, on Chico's posthumous behalf, accept that. We are so thrilled that Chico can now be a part of this haul, and we are so thrilled that you have chosen to be a part of this episode as we get back into some litigations, and we will return with that next week as well. But until then, some thanks are in order, of course, to producer Craig, all the coders behind him, our musical director, Don Ham, for our lovely theme music, and to you, dear listener. Thank you for joining us. If you're one of the many Brazilians on Blue Sky that I will hopefully be able to pander to with this futsal segment, welcome. You can find all of our information at bit.ly/rememberthatguy, all one word, all lowercase. Happy to have any and all along for the ride. Happy to be back in the saddle for all this stuff. Anything from the two of you as we head our way out here?
You guys want to trade Bryce Huff back for Hassan Reddick since he won't play, he won't show up to us, and you guys have apparently benched Bryce Huff?
That would be pretty funny.
The bit has been thought of.
It would be really funny. I mean, maybe.
I will let you know when this episode comes out Monday on all of our channels whether or not that trade happened. You can find, once again, those channels at that bit.ly/rememberthatguy. And until we have that news for you, I will simply have to remain one of your hosts, James.
I'm the very special guest Xavier.
And I'm Diaz. And as the late, great James Earl Jones said in Field of Dreams, oh, people will guy, Ray. People will most definitely guy. Yeah, just one other thing about the circumcision before we get back to the main course.
That's literally, that one line is going to be the outtake.
Two things, actually.